Hi, my name is Krys Laxon, and I'm from The Beat. I'm very excited to be speaking with you guys today. I've loved the season. I binged it all in one day. It was great. So, my first question is actually for Wrenn. So, in season two, Margo has to tackle the difficult task of dealing with both like government bureaucracy and also with the Soviets and trying to de-escalate tensions between two countries. Can you talk a little bit about how she faces up to these challenges?
Well, I mean, I think one of the things that's really beautiful about how our writers went about that was that she kind of falls on her face. One of my favorite scenes to shoot was a scene that happens in our JSC conference room. Krys was there that day, and it was just like a room full of people. And I mean, it was the kind of thing you dream of as an actor because they're just, I'm sure you know which scene I'm talking about. It's just crickets. And the longer it goes on, the more awkward it gets. And I really loved that they kind of set things up and, like where everything just like the first domino that fell was such an extraordinary kind of like fizzling out of nothingness. And that, Margaret really has to work her way back towards figuring out like, well, how are we actually going to make this work if my hands are tied and, my counterpart on the Soviet side, if his hands are tied as well, like something's got to give. So I really loved playing that. I thought that was a lot of fun, and also I always love seeing Margo in those situations and figuring out like kind of how she navigates them because it's not her necessarily her strong suit. She's definitely better at it than she was in season one, but like she's not a political animal first. That's really there's been a big learning curve for her there. So yeah, it's I just look at those scenes and I'm like, goody goody gumdrops. So nerdy.
Fantastic. Yeah, great. And Krys, we know that Ed ends up assigning Danny a commanding position, and it's only after she prompts him to. And it's such a big thing because she's, the first Black female commander, and it feels like she's been revitalized again after all these years. Can you talk about how you feel about that storyline and, your feelings about her character this season?
Oh man, I love that scene. I love that scene because neither Danny or Ed is a bad guy. We're watching Ed, who knows Danny very well. They've become really good friends over the last 10 or 15 years. These guys spent months in this 200 square foot box on the surface of the moon. So the idea that Ed wouldn't have Danny's best interest is far from the truth. And at the same time, because he is not in her shoes, he doesn't recognize the importance of not just her going on another mission, but her commanding a mission. And I think that scene was so beautifully written because it's difficult to see the privilege, and it's difficult to understand like, where can I be better? How can I be better? And Ed saying like, does everything have to be about the first Black this and the first female this? Why can't we all just be? And Ed doesn't realize that seeing is believing. For people to see, for people to believe that it's an option for women or for Black women to achieve this feat, they have to see it first. And so in the writing of that scene, I just thought that it was so exquisitely done, and was definitely, I'd say, one of my favorite scenes of the season.
Yeah, for sure. And then Ren, just a little bit about Aleda and her relationship with Margo. Can you talk a little bit about working with Coral and how you guys fostered that?
Yeah. First, though, I just want to say I want to hear more at a later time about your thoughts about the show because the way that you speak about both of these characters, I'm like, she should help us with the PR part of this because I had some really
I
interesting
have so
thoughts
many thoughts.
already. Well, I just love the way that you talked about like Danny being revitalized because it's 100%.
Hmm.
I mean, Krys did such an amazing job of bringing that to life, but I just hadn't heard
Thanks, bud.
somebody describe it in that way. It was really great. Um, so as far as Margot's relationship with Aleda, I think, that it was really fun because I wasn't sure where they were going to go with that. I also felt a little bit like this is going to be tricky because Margot's all about the mission and she's all about the work, but at the same time, she's had her own experience with feeling shame from feeling rejected by an adult, which is, how she felt for the most part about her dad. So I felt like it was a really interesting kind of tightrope to walk between balancing, like, I know I made the right call in that moment because there were people's lives who were at stake in space. But also, I know I really disappointed this young woman, and I don't really have the language or the ability to address that. I feel really inept. So, like, Margo oftentimes, I think, doesn't feel at a loss for what to do next, because usually it's, if it's an equation, she knows the answer, but people don't necessarily work in equations. So I think for her, it's a little bit like, I'm not used to being this uncomfortable. I'm not used to not knowing what to do. So I felt like that was really a fun scene to play. And Coral Pina was just such a huge addition to our cast. I mean, she's really, really wonderful to work with. It was just great to have an actress that seemingly confident. She told me after she didn't feel that way, but she's just great from the get go, and we had some really lovely scenes that we got to play with each other. So that was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Well, I want to thank you guys so much for speaking with me. I'm loving the show, and I'm excited for everybody to see it.
And I love your
So much.
t-shirt.
Yeah.
Thanks for repping
See that?
NASA.
Yeah.